The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
There is no question that journalism is under attack and that sports journalism is not what it used to be. But credit Pablo Torre for cranking it out. Pablo Torre, who basically blew the lid off the NFL Players Association and led to the resignation of the executive director and the president, has come out with another one. This one about Kawhi Leonard and Steve Ballmer, the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, who may have circumvented the salary cap with Kawhi with something that, could land the billionaire in some hot water, or maybe not. They'll just let it slide. It's not what I was going to start the show with today. We'll talk about the Commanders back on the practice field today as they get ready for the New York Giants. Some good stuff from Von Miller yesterday as he was on the Rich Eisen show, which, by the way, is part of our new lineup here. Rich Eisen and his show was bought by ESPN. He's been doing it for quite a while, but the NFL Network, which he's a part of, is now a part of ESPN as everything gets gobbled up by the four letters. But this is what Pablo Torre has today, and this is independent of ESPN. He still does work with ESPN. He appears on PTI, filling in for Will Bond. I don't know. There are probably some other projects that he's involved in, but he's got a background in reporting. He's a Harvard graduate. Wrote for Sports Illustrated, got to ESPN, variety of shows. He was so good that when he wanted to go and join the network, which Dan Le Batard is a part of, they said, okay, you can do that, and also put out this podcast, Pablo Torre Finds Out. And what he's got today, this exclusive, Kawhi Leonard signed a $28 million endorsement deal for a no-show job with a fraudulent tree planting company funded with a $50 million investment from Clippers owner Steve Ballmer, according to documents that Pablo Torre obtained. It was the way to circumvent the salary cap, an inside source said. Right? Clippers have a cap just like everybody else. Nobody really understands how the cap works because some teams are way over it and they pay the luxury and whatever else is involved. But whatever, they found a way to get Kawhi Leonard what he wanted, even though he hardly ever plays because he's hurt all the time. But $28 million went into his pocket for a tree planting company, which not only wouldn't seem to have any kind of connection to an NBA player. You know, hey, I'm Kawhi Leonard, and when I want to plant trees, I use this. No, it was just one of those, no-show jobs that they used to have in college to kind of get around the way that athletes could get paid, like, make sure there's enough water in the swimming pool, and we'll pay you, $20,000 a year or whatever. But this is reporting, and good for Pablo for getting in front of this and looking at it, and who knows where it's going to lead. But if this lands on Adam Silver's desk, he's got to be concerned about this. And I don't even know if you can fine a billionaire like Ballmer enough money. I don't know if you can cripple the Clippers because they're already crippled by Kawhi Leonard and others not playing. But maybe you take away draft picks. Who knows? Who knows what you do? But that is something, and it's not nothing. And if Steve Ballmer, who is very, very wealthy, can just stroke a check for $50 million, out of which $28 million comes to pay Kawhi Leonard in an attempt to circumvent the cap, then he can do it. He's got the money to do it. So keep an eye on that. I have not had time to delve into this because I just saw it right before I went on the air. But Pablo Torre and Don Van Natta, and Don's got another story out about the Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons breakup with new details, including one of the details being that Micah and his agent made a last-ditch attempt to stay in Dallas, and Jerry had already made up his mind that was it. Micah was going to go, and his side of it is, and we'll get to more of this, more of the details, is that Jerry sat down with Micah on his own. That's called hot boxing, where you hot box out the agent and you make a deal with the player. And then Micah Parsons went to his agent and said, here's the deal we worked out. And the agent said, no. This is not the way it works. And he went back to the Cowboys, the agent, Mulgeta is his name, I believe, David Mulgeta. And he said, no, this is the floor. This is where we start. This is not where the deal is. And Jerry said, the hell with that. We're done. So, so there's some reporting being done by some excellent reporters like Pablo Torre and Don Van Natta. Anyway, season's about to start. Some new stuff for the start of the season that you may or may not be aware of. The touchback line is now the 35-yard line. It is 5 yards further up, which would seem to encourage more kickoffs. Kickoff rates were up last year, with it being at the 30-yard line at like 43%. This new line, they think, will increase the kickoffs to about 60 to 70%. Like if you don't want the other team to get it at the 35-yard line, then you have to, pop it up in the air and force a kickoff return, which they now believe is safer, the way they line up the return team and the kicking team. So we'll see on that. Onside kicks. No more, sneak onside kicks like it was a big factor in the Saints upsetting the Colts in that Super Bowl. Teams will now need to declare their intention. Well, they still need. This was from last year, too. They need to declare their intention to try an onside kick because of the different formation, but a new change will allow trailing teams to try one before the start of the fourth quarter. And so coverage players will also be allowed to line up 1 yard closer in hopes of increasing the rate of recovery from about 6% over the last 3 years to about 10%. So we'll see if that's meaningful at all. The overtime, don't like this at all. I've always liked just the coin flip. Team gets the ball, they kick a field goal, win the game. But no. None of this. If you win the flip and you take it down the field for a touchdown, you win the game. Nope. Each team gets to touch the ball, just like in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. But the overtime period is going to be only 10 minutes. So they're not going back to 15. I think it's going to lead to more ties, which was the intent of having the overtime rules put in place so that you wouldn't have ties. But I just think this is going to lead to a lot more ties. And then also in replay, the NFL expanded its replay assist system to overturn objective calls if there was clear and obvious evidence that a foul didn't occur. The calls could include face mask penalties, whether there was forcible contact to the head or neck area, horse collar tackles, and tripping. Replay would also be able to overturn a roughing the kicker or running into the kicker penalty if video showed that it was obvious. And referees will no longer use the chains. Yay! They will have the virtual measuring system. This won't eliminate the officials who manually mark the ball, like on the sidelines, but no more of these chubby guys running out with the 10 yards of chain on the field to determine if there's a first down. So you're all ready for the football season. Dan Quinn talking yesterday in his weekly appearance with Chick Hernandez on Channel 9, talking about the importance of adding Von Miller this year.
He's already made us better. His engagement in the defensive line room, at practice, their ability to communicate, blitzes, pass rush games, alignments, techniques. It's going to carry over onto the field, but adding him already has added value to us. There's wisdom, but there's also connection. He loves football, man, he loves it. And it shows by the way he practices and by the way he engages his teammates. So he's been another one that's been a blast to coach.
And Von Miller showed up yesterday on the Rich Eisen show, which is now heard on ESPN 630. And they talked about, and I'm just thinking about defensive teams or defensive lines with two Hall of Famers. You think of like Deacon Jones and Merlin Olsen with the Rams, the Purple People Eaters. I think Alan Page is the only one in. Carl Eller, I don't think, got in. Jim Marshall did not get in. Amazing. Only one from that line. And the Steel Curtain, Mean Joe Green, and maybe L.C. Greenwood is in. But you think of linebacking duos, and Von Miller is not going to be a regular as a linebacker. The two linebackers are Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. But Miller is going to be used in passing situations as an edge rusher and so forth. And so now you have two guys who are headed to the Hall of Fame, both with Super Bowl rings, Bobby Wagner and Von Miller, who's got two, one with the Rams and one with the Broncos. And in talking to Rich Eisen, he told him about the importance and the coolness of playing alongside what will be a fellow Hall of Famer.
It's cool, man, because I've been a huge fan of Bobby Wagner, my whole career. Them registering me as a linebacker and, them registering him as a linebacker, we kind of battled for those all-pro votes. Nice. He beat me out. He beat me out on a couple all-pro votes. Mm-hmm. But now they fixed that. They got an edge rusher and all that stuff. So if it was like that back in the day, I probably would have had a few more. But Bobby beat me out a couple of times. And, it's good to have a guy like that in the locker room, man. I've been a fan of his for a super long time. He's a vet. He knows what it takes to win Super Bowls. Not only him, but, Zach Ertz and, Laramie Tunsil and, all of these guys, man. We got a good group of vets in there, and it's good to just be there with guys that know how to get it done, and they've been doing it for a very long time at a high level.
Yeah, the conversation about the Commanders roster, part of it is you do have the oldest roster entering the season, but you also have a young unicorn at arguably the most important position. You have been around some good ones, sir, as a teammate. You have been around Peyton. Obviously, he was much more veteran when you were winning a Super Bowl with him. Stafford, the same way. Josh Allen, you were with him in an MVP campaign. What does Jayden Daniels look like to you, and how he compares with others that you've played with, Vaughn?
Man, he's great, man. And you just can't leave, Josh Allen and go anywhere and go play for anybody, So that's why it took me a little bit. But the Commanders, man. Whenever I was able to join here, it was a huge part of that was Jayden and Coach Quinn, and man, Jayden, he's the full package, man. He can run the ball, he can throw the ball, he's smart, he's composed out there, he doesn't get rattled. No game is ever too big, no moment is ever too small, man. He's even keel. And he's angry out there, man. He just attacks, and that's the type of vibe that you want coming from a quarterback. He has this shade of Kobe in him, Kobe Bryant. So it's good to be around him, man. He's a true competitor, man, and I'm anxious to get out there and play, man. He's gonna score a lot of points. We got Scary Terry and Debo and Austin Eckler. They're gonna put up a lot of points, and that usually adds up for me to be able to go out there and do what I do and go protect the lead and rush after the quarterback.
You went Mamba on me there, Vaughn. I mean, I didn't see that name coming. Why do you compare him to Kobe?
He has. He's a huge fan of Kobe. He's a huge fan of Kobe, and in the locker room, you just feel it, man. He's he's a true competitor. Practicing against him, he's on attack mode all the time, and he's talking trash with Bobby every day, man. And they just go after it, man. Whoa. And it's really dope to be a part of that, man. And I'm anxious to see how we play this week, man. If we can go out there and do what we do, it'd be a good week for us.
I did not see Jayden Daniels talking smack to Bobby Wagner on this.
It's friendly. It's friendly though. It's not. I'm sure. It's not in the trade.
I'm sure it is. But again, because you made the point of nothing seems to bother him. Nothing. No. I don't know if you saw that because you were obviously on the sideline of the Monday night game against Cincinnati on ESPN. Lisa Salters asked him a great question when he ran in the end zone up the middle, in a preseason game. She's like, why didn't you get down? He said, because I wanted to score. And I you know what I mean? Like it is funny because it's so simple, but it is just gives you a mindset of, okay, he's just doing his thing and it works. It just works in a way that I guess it's easy to follow, right?
Yeah, it is, man. It just works, man. Like I said, even before I got here and just analyzing his rookie season, he didn't look like a rookie out there. He was composed. It didn't matter what team he played or what game he was in. It could be the NFC Championship. It could be Monday night, Thursday night games. He just looked like he was just going out there and playing his game, man. The moment was never too big for him. And, hopefully we can be able to build on that this season. And, I've seen shades of him building on that in practice. And it'd be great to go out there and play against somebody else and to see him continue to develop and evolve. And to what quarterback we really don't even know. He doesn't even have a ceiling right now. And that's one of the cool things about being around Jaden, man. He's so young that we don't even know how good he can be, man. And it's just an honor and a privilege to be a part of it.
How good can this team be? Again, you've gotten 2 of those trophies behind you. One in Los Angeles, a team you joined midseason, and obviously Denver, which drafted you. What about this team? How does it feel in this locker room to somebody who knows what it takes, Vaughn?
Man, it feels great. And I think it starts with the leadership here, man. With Adam Peters and Coach Quinn and his coaching staff that we have, man. We got a couple head coaches on his coaching staff. With Anthony Lynn and we got so many guys on the coaching staff, man. Coach Pagano is in the room with us, man, and Coach Darryl Tapp and Ryan Kerrigan. These guys are great coaches, man, and Sharif Floyd, man. And I think it starts with the leadership that we have, and it just kind of trickles down from there, man. And we got a little bit in every single spot, and it takes a little bit of luck down the stretch. The football guys gotta fall in your favor too. But if we can just control what we control, man, I really like our chances.
That's Von Miller talking yesterday with Rich Eisen. Realized that he's played with Peyton Manning, who's in the Hall of Fame, Matt Stafford, who has a really good chance to get there and may very well get there, and Josh Allen, who's tracking to get there. And he's just come from playing with Josh Allen, who's also a runner of a different style than Jaden Daniels. But the compliments that he's giving him, I mean, those are sincere. He's not just, blowing smoke there. And when he talks about the Mamba mentality, I'm sure that's something that Jaden has embraced. He grew up in the Los Angeles area, loves the NBA, loves the Lakers. So I'm sure that he grew up looking at the Mamba mentality and has adopted that. So that was a pretty cool conversation. The depth chart is out for the Giants game. Hey, Jaden's starting. What do you know? But 2 rookies in the starting lineup. And I think that's significant because when they took Josh Connerly in the first round, it's like, okay, you got some veteran line help here. Maybe you bring him along slowly. Andrew Wiley has started for a Super Bowl team in Kansas City. He's been kind of up and down here. Nick Allegretti, starter last year, and a starter in Kansas City. Backup mostly, but a starter. You've got guys who can fill in these different holes. Allegretti more of a guard than a tackle. They signed George Fant, who's a veteran. But to see Connerly in the starting lineup is good. It was certainly helpful that the coaching staff got the note from Cliff Kingsbury, hey, draft this guy, or Adam Peters did. So he's predisposed to like him. And then Trey Amos will be a starting corner, their second-round pick. And Jalen Lane, who I believe they took in the 4th round out of Virginia Tech, he's going to be their punt returner. So to see draft picks pay off right away, that's a good thing. And that's the depth chart that came out this week. All right, coming up, we will get to something that Dan Patrick said the other day about Tom Brady being both an owner and a broadcaster and why that's not going to work. And then a softball thrown at Brady the other day by Chris Collinsworth about the same thing. We'll hear what Brady has to say about that. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So last year when Tom Brady started his very lucrative job as the Fox #1 analyst, $37.5 million a year on a 10-year contract, they looked at his other interests, including part ownership of the Raiders, and they said, whoa, wait a minute. He's an owner. He's going to have access to meetings and information that other owners won't have as a broadcaster. They meet with the coaches and they meet with players before the game to kind of get, some inside information. Some they'll use on the broadcast, some they won't. And there's some off-the-record things that are said in these things. They are. I've known enough guys who've done this over the years. They tell you that you get things off the record that kind of lead you in the direction of what you want to say. You just can't attribute what was said in the meetings to the coach or the player. That's access that owners don't have. except Tom Brady, who's an owner of the Raiders. So they said, okay, Tom Brady can no longer participate in those production meetings with the coaches and the players. And he can't go to practice either. So now, a year later, they go, well, yeah, it's Tom Brady, so he can go to these meetings. Still can't go to practice, but he can go to these meetings. I don't even know if he shows up in time to go to the practice anyway. You know, he can fly in on his private plane sometimes the day of the game. I don't know if he does that, but he can. He's that rich. He's got his own plane. But anyway, the other day, Dan Patrick on his show, who Dan knows as much about TV broadcasting as anybody, he was discussing this change to allow Tom Brady to be in these production meetings, and he don't like it.
Brady's first year as a broadcaster, he was banned from the information gathering sessions for just about the whole season. And the rules were put in place due to his ownership stake. The NFL relented for the Super Bowl. Brady's play-by-play partner, Kevin Burkhardt, and other crew members would inform Brady of what was said in these meetings. The sessions with coaches and players can reveal nuggets that can be used during the broadcast. Sometimes they take place over Zoom, sometimes in person. Brady is still not allowed to go to team practices. Fox and the NFL declined comment. All right. He shouldn't be in these production meetings. You're a minority owner of the Raiders. Now, whether he was still involved with a team that was involved in the two biggest cheating scandals of all time. Correct? He was involved in, well, his team was involved in Spygate. There was Deflategate. He shouldn't be in these meetings. It's just pick one or the other. The NFL wants Tom to be there doing the games. I get that. But, you know, now you're kind of changing the rules just so Tom can go into these meetings. And he does need to be in these meetings. If you want to be a broadcaster, be a broadcaster. Go into those meetings. Be professional, and they're going to treat you as such, a professional. But, I mean, if I'm a coach and I play the Raiders at some point this season, and I don't know how many times this would happen, how forthcoming do you want to be here? Tom can ask you anything you want. Now, you don't have to answer that, but I don't know. Somebody's, this guy's got a banged up ankle, probably be that way all season long. Or this guy, can't count on him, it feels like, he's not very good at the end of season. Who knows what information comes out? I just think you got to be fair to being either a minority owner who is very active, from what I'm told, or you're going to be a broadcaster. And keep this in mind, how competitive Tom is. I don't think this is like a summer, vacation for Tom where I'm going to be a broadcaster for a little while. He's going to want to be great, and you're going to want to get information. He wants to get somebody who's going to tell him something. Then he's going to be, oh, did you hear what Tom said? Or did you hear what Tom found out? And he does need these nuggets. I mean, Tom is learning TV. He knows football. There's big difference. There are guys who aren't great football players who are really good analysts because they understand TV as well. And Tom is understanding that. And I think if you want to be successful, be in the meetings, go to a practice. I mean, this is why Collinsworth is the best in the business. He's there. He's going to the practices. He knows who these players are. There are some analysts, the further you get away, the less you know. When you were playing and you're a couple years removed, you know who these players are. You get 5, 7, 10 years away and you're like 57, 32. It's not what you should be doing. But if Tom's going to do it, I think you got to say to Tom, decide what you want to do. But the NFL is going to bend the rules here because they want Tom to be part of the Fox broadcast. I understand that. I don't think it's right. Because he's sort of going to the meetings or he's sort of involved in the game, but he can't go to the practices. But then everybody who's there is going to tell him everything that went on. So really, he's kind of there by proxy.
So that's the Dan Patrick take. And he referenced Chris Collinsworth, who is a semi-regular on his show. Collinsworth appears with Dan from time to time. They're friends. And apparently Collinsworth doesn't quite see it the way that Dan sees it, at least for the purposes of the podcast that he did the other day with Tom Brady. Collinsworth runs Pro Football Focus, and he also does a podcast associated with this. So he had Tom Brady on, and Brady did it from his vacation home in the Bahamas, took time out from his last vacation before he rolls into the grind of the NFL season. And you heard what Dan had to say. Dan says pick one. Owner, broadcaster. Can't do both. Collinsworth, and this was really, I think, a softball question, but maybe indicates the way Collinsworth feels, like, hey, no big deal. Tom Brady gets to go to the production meetings. This is how he framed the question to Brady the other day.
It's always hard doing the broadcast, right? But now they tied both hands behind your back because you're a part owner of the Raiders. And so all these teams, and paranoia runs amok in the National Football League, all these teams were convinced you were going to get the secret sauce to their team and be able to advantage the Raiders with this whole thing. Now they've lightened it up a little bit. Tell us that story.
I would listen to press conferences all week anyway. You know, whether it's the weekly coach's press conference that he has to do on a Wednesday or Friday, I'd listen to that. The players all speak to the media. So it's not like you're forcing players to answer a question. I've always felt like if I ask a question and they don't want to answer it, I have no problem. The only thing I want to do is gain insight into the game to help the viewers understand the game a little bit better. And I think, Chris, the important part that I'm sure you feel the same way, you want a great game. You want both teams to perform very well. I don't want to be on a broadcast and be negative about people. I want to showcase the great parts about every organization because I love the NFL. I love the sport. And if I can communicate that in a positive way to the viewer, great. And we're on live television. I'm not going to lie about anything I'm seeing to the audience. That's the audience that I'm trying to be, as raw and as unfiltered with as possible. So I think me asking questions in a production meeting is no different than a media member asking a question in a weekly press conference. They're going to answer it the same way. So, it's nice for my crew to have me involved because I think as a cohesive unit, what we're trying to do, that's going to be a real positive. But outside of that, I just want to go in there and be as professional as possible. And I am a professional. I was a professional as I played. I'm a professional in this role. And ultimately, I want to be as prepared as I can be so the broadcast for our viewers is the best as possible.
That's Tom Brady, and it's 100% wrong what he says about asking a question in a news conference. It's completely different than what you get in these production meetings when you sit one-on-one with the coaches and the players, because Tom, who I'm sure has never participated in a press conference as a reporter, he's participated in hundreds, maybe thousands of them as a player being asked questions, but being on the other side and asking questions, he hasn't done that. And the way that works generally is that each reporter gets two questions and then they move on to the next. You can actually have a discussion with the coach or the player whose game you're preparing to do, and you can delve in deep and you can get a lot more information. And if you want some information that's going to help you with what you do with your team, like what Dan says, like, hey, I know you're playing on a gimpy ankle. Oh, you say that in a press conference, the player says, oh, it's fine, and you move on. You go, no, I saw you when you came in the room, you're limping, and by the way, I had something similar to that back in 2012, or however you want to do it. No, it's not the same as a news conference. It's not exactly the same. And so when you say, oh, it's no big deal if I'm there or not, yeah, it'll help you. Trust me, it'll help you this year. And it could help them with whatever happens with the Raiders down the road. So there's Dan is right about that. But he's also right about the league saying, it's Tom Brady. We're not going to do anything to Tom Brady. That's the guy with 7 Super Bowl rings. We're not going to mess with that guy. So, yeah, it's, different strokes for different folks and different rules for different people. And there are different rules for Tom Brady. They like the fact, the league does, not just Fox, but the league likes the fact that the winningest quarterback of all time is going to be on the number one game on the network every single week. And One other story on these production meetings. This goes way back over 20 years ago, almost 25, when Steve Spurrier was coaching the Redskins, and they had a game in Dallas, and it wound up being the top game on Fox because it was Buck and Aikman doing it, and this was 2003, so this is the second year and last year for Spurrier, and Bill Parcells is the coach of the Cowboys, and he is just working Spurrier like a rag. I mean, I think they racked up something like 11 sacks or something like that. I mean, Washington just looked terrible. And usually when the broadcast team is doing a game, they'll say, hey, they got to make some adjustments. No, they're just killing Steve Spurrier. One punch after another from Buck and Aikman. And you kind of wonder what's going on here, because you never really have heard that before. Not that they weren't right in their criticism. As it turned out, as I was told, these production meetings take place on a Saturday. So by the time they get to the game, they've had it the day before. So they call Steve Spurrier's room, and they say, hey, it's time, Coach, for you to show up for the production meeting. Buck and Aikman are there. They want to ask you some questions. He goes, I'm watching the Gators here. And they go, well, this is part of the contractual obligation of a coach that he's got to do. All right. So he goes to the production meeting, and he gives them a bunch of cliched answers. And so they're pissed at him for that. And so when his team was getting rocked on the field the following day, they let him have it. So you don't buy what Tom Brady is saying, that you get the same amount of information in a news conference that you do with these one-on-one meetings. If that was the case, they would just give the broadcasters the weekly tapes of the press conferences, and they're always available online. And say, watch this. We don't need you to bother. Just show up and do the game. It's a 1:00 kickoff, so you get to the stadium by like 12:30. You're good. No. That's not the way it works. Coming up in the next hour, we'll deal more with the Micah Parsons situation and Orioles preview as Cal Ripken gets ready to celebrate the 30th anniversary of 21-31. On Saturday, they will celebrate the 30th anniversary of Cal Ripken breaking the unbreakable record. 2,130 consecutive games played by Lou Gehrig. On September 6th of 1995, Cal made it 2,131. We'll replay the speech he made after the game. Also, we'll talk to Bill Stetka, who is head of the Alumni Association, for details on what will be a really cool event coming up on Saturday. Wondering about Cal making a lap around the field again? Yeah, he will. Just not exactly the same way that he did it 30 years ago. We'll get to that and a whole lot more. The Micah Parsons situation as he gets ready to play his first game for the Green Bay Packers. He was expecting to play on Thursday night when the Cowboys open up the season tomorrow night against the Philadelphia Eagles, but that'll have to wait until Sunday when he plays the Detroit Lions. And then the following Thursday night, Micah Parsons will be on the field as the Commanders play their first road game at Green Bay. And that will be one of several. I think they're at the max. Is it 5? I think it's 5 national TV games. They're going to play on Christmas Day. They're going to play on Monday Night Football. They're going to play on Sunday Night Football. The days of counting on a Washington football game at 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, even though that's how they open the season, not that often among the 17 games this year. Now, Micah is in Green Bay. He has got the big contract, the $188 million contract with like $136 million guaranteed. And, boy, the way this drama played out, we had really like Second City here with Terry McLaurin. There was more drama than anybody would have expected with McLaurin, but that got done. But very few expected that Jerry Jones would pull the trigger and send Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers. But in reporting from Don Van Natta at ESPN, it really was more Jerry than anything else, and Parsons apparently did want to stay, and Jerry had enough. This is what Van Natta reports, according to a source close to Jerry Jones, that it had nothing to do with the agent of Micah Parsons, David Mulgeta, though Jones insisted to reporters in Palm Beach that he didn't know Mulgeta's name, adding, "The agent is not a factor here or something to worry about." At that point, Jones was dug in because, and this goes back to a meeting that they had in March, which they call hotboxing, where the owner is talking to the player rather than the agent, and that Micah looked him in his eyes and said, "We have a deal." The source relayed a feeling of Jones of, "Oh, that's how they're going to do it? Micah is going to negotiate with us. We're going to go up there and have an agreement." And then the agent says, "That's the floor. That's where we're going." In other words, Micah Parsons and Jerry agreed on a deal. Parsons goes back to the agent, David Mulgeta, with the deal. And Mulgeta goes, "No, hold on a second." He goes to Jerry, goes, "Nah, this isn't the deal. This is where we're going to start." And Jerry at that point was like, "Hell no, that's not the way this is going to work." There was also this in the reporting from Don Van Natta, that there was a last-ditch effort to stay with the Cowboys, and Jerry wasn't interested. According to the report, Parsons' agent, David Mulgeta, reached out to Jones and the front office 2 days before the trade to Green Bay. He reportedly offered to do whatever it took to get the deal done. Jones was not interested and bluntly informed Mulgeta as such. They said, we'll jump on a video call, we'll fly to Dallas, whatever you want. No. Jerry responded to the message saying the Cowboys were prepping to trade Parsons, and if he wanted to play in Dallas in 2025, he would have to do so on a fifth-year option, which he already had, much like Terry McLaurin has a contract for this year. So does Parsons. Parsons would become a free agent in 2026, but then they could franchise him. So here we are. He's no longer with the Cowboys. He's with the Green Bay Packers, and this may have had something to do with it as well. Although Mulgeta is trying to play this down, Mike is dealing with a back issue. And there's even a report that he may have to take an epidural to play on Sunday. Adam Schefter yesterday on our morning show on Sportsmanlike with what he has found out about this back problem.
I think there's some concern, probably a little bit more than people realized. How about that? But I don't know that it's going to wind up holding him out. It sounds like, and, I went back and forth with people. I said he was going to get an epidural, then I got some that he was going to consider getting an epidural from people, and I got some doctors emailing me that if it's in that area that it's not an epidural, but then I was told that, yes, actually if it's in that spot, it's a transforaminal epidural, which basically is an X-ray guided injection of steroid and anesthetic medication into the epidural space between the I can't even pronounce it.
What are you trying to do? Why are you trying to be a doctor?
Yeah, exactly. I'll stick to what I try to get done and away from medicine. But the bottom line is, it sounds like he may have to get a pain-killing injection, however you want to describe that, to play on Sunday. But it's certainly, I can't imagine that he is going to get traded to Green Bay. They're going to be playing the Detroit Lions. He will have just signed his $8,800 million contract, and he's not going to play. That's hard for me to imagine. So however it is, I expect him to be out there, but we'll see how that plays out.
Adam, in listening to the emergency pod you did, which is still available, and I would certainly suggest people listen to that because it takes you through the whole 48 hours leading up to this trade. You mentioned one quick thing I wanted to follow up on. How close was Micah Parsons to getting traded to a different team?
I never got the sense that it was very close. And again, I'm not telling you that this was a Luka Doncic situation where the Mavericks only shopped him to the Lakers and that was it. I don't know that was the case, but it certainly didn't sound like anybody else was seriously close to acquiring him. It doesn't sound like the Cowboys were in conversations between the Packers and another team and opted to go with the Packers offer. It just feels like it was the Packers' situation to lose. They got it done, and now, obviously, they'll be expected to line up on Sunday against the Detroit Lions.
Shefty, looking at the other side of the trade with the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones intimated that those first-round picks that they received as compensation could potentially be used to get players to help them this year. Any insight as to what the Dallas Cowboys are thinking in terms of potential moves as they go forward? They just extended Deron Bland, but going outside of the organization and actually adding talent to this roster?
Well, I would have said like Trey Hendrickson would have been a logical guy, but he's under contract now. That's not happening. And so I think I'm not expecting them to make a trade before Thursday night's opener against the Eagles. So I think my immediate reaction, Chris, would be like, let's see how the season's going. Let's see if they can get out to a nice start, 3-1, 4-2. Let's see if there are teams struggling. And then I think that they would be positioned between now and the trade deadline, if it's warranted, if it's going to help their team this season and they're in a position to capitalize on it, to make a move. Like if we remember last year, nobody would have thought the Commanders would have been in the spot they were. And then at the trade deadline, they traded for Marshawn Lattimore from the New Orleans Saints. Now, he battled injuries and might not have made the type of impact that people would have liked during the season. But I think if Dallas is winning games, they're going to be more apt to make a move. And there'll be other teams that lose games that all of a sudden fall out of the playoff race or recognize that it might be better to have some draft capital, and maybe they make a move. So I just think it's a little early to forecast that right now, whether Dallas would do it and who it would be.
Well, you see, and I think that Jerry might be in a tough position if they are losing and having all those draft picks that he said we could use as capital to get other players, maybe 6 other players. Well, go out and do it. And you got a quarterback who's making a lot of money, not getting any younger. CeeDee Lamb making a lot of money. You got a team that you think can win. You may have to use that. And an 82-year-old man who's rebuilding a team for the future with those high-priced talents at wide receiver and quarterback doesn't add up. I would think that they would probably, if they are struggling, even if they're not, even if they have a chance, I think that they will be doing some of what Schefter just pointed out happened last year when that trade was made by Adam Peters. College football. We'll get to the whole Belichick thing in a moment. I got a comp on what Belichick did in his opening game, giving up 48 points, which he had never done in 511 games in the NFL as a coordinator and a head coach. He'd never given up 48 points in a game. First game in college, gives up 48 with his girlfriend roaming the sidelines and talking to him during the game. Really bizarre. We'll talk more about that. And there's real good insight from a reporter who's been covering North Carolina football for nearly 20 years. He was on with Dan Patrick yesterday. But this was PTI last night with the other part of week 1 in college football. Tony and Mike finally back together for the first time in like a month, and they were actually in the studio together last night. And this was how they assessed the damage, and really it's damage of week 1 in college football.
Arch Manning underwhelmed in Texas's loss at Ohio State. Florida State ran all over the previously mentioned Alabama. Notre Dame's fourth quarter rally fell short at Miami. And LSU held on to beat Clemson at, well, maybe Death Valley.
The other one.
Yeah. Tom, there was a whole lot going on. What was your biggest takeaway from week 1?
So normally I would sit here and I would say it's Ohio State beating Texas because you have reputedly the number 1 team this year in Texas goes to Ohio State, which was the defending national champion from last year. You have the primetime debut of Arch Manning. And so it's got everything. Now, even though it's a dull game, and even though Ohio State wins just by 7 at home, and even though, as you say, Manning is underwhelming, normally we would say that's the biggest deal because it's 1 versus 2. But that's not the biggest story. The biggest story is Alabama. Alabama losing to Florida State, which was 2-10 last year.
Yeah.
Alabama now, in its last 10 games, 5-5. These are numbers unheard of with Nick Saban.
And one of those was probably against Samford.
Nick Saban
FBS
coaches 230 games at Alabama and 4 times loses to unranked teams. Kalen DeBoer has now coached 14 games. This is the 4th time he's lost to an unranked team. So I will sit here and say Alabama's not North Carolina.
No.
Alabama is a football school. Kalen DeBoer is in trouble, and if the buyout isn't $70 million, he might be walking the streets tonight.
Yeah, because Alabama doesn't have those Texas A&M oil fields.
No.
That every alum at A&M seems to have and is happy to write a check himself or herself for $70 million.
Hello, Jimbo Fisher.
That's right. But, Tony, so let's go back to the Ohio State-Texas game for a second. Here's what stood out to me week 1 and all the days leading up to week 1. I don't want mass media, major media, networks, including people that we like to call our friends, to just ruin the watching of college football for me, the consumption of college football, by exaggerating the hell out of everything, by overstating everything. Arch Manning is not Peyton or Eli or Archie just yet. Just let him simmer a little bit.
Let it percolate. Let it
Jeremiah Smith. He is not Jerry Rice just yet. I heard somebody who I probably like a lot say, probably somebody I covered, say he's the best college football player I've ever seen. You know what my recommendation would be? Then watch more college football over the last 50 years, because he ain't the best I've seen. He's made some great catches and things that make you go, woo. But can we just stop? The greatest weekend of, all of it is just slobbered over.
It was a fabulous opening weekend in terms of games.
In terms of
matchups.
We intended to see that, and we didn't get it.
Yeah.
Right? No, the Miami-Notre Dame game kind of lived up to it. LSU-Clemson had some moments.
Give LSU some credit.
I will.
I think that's the first time that Brian Kelly has won at LSU in the opener.
It was impressive.
Yeah.
Can we just let the season grow a little bit?
Do you want to talk at all about Northwestern and Tulane and Jake Retzlaff going from BYU to Tulane?
Yeah, that was a blowout. And what Tony's referencing is Jake Retzlaff, who is Jewish and was at BYU for a couple of years and was really good last year and was known as the BY Jew. There was a story about allegedly a sexual assault with a female student. It later turned out that I guess it was consensual, but it was a violation of the code of BYU. And so he had to leave, and he goes to Tulane. And nowadays, you can go wherever you want right away. He goes to Tulane and started for them and beat the hell out of Northwestern this past weekend. So that's college football. And I'm 100% in agreement with Mike when he talks about the overhyping. But he's got to realize that he and Tony kind of planted the seed for this. They were the first really successful debate show on ESPN. It's the greatest sports show of all time. It's coming up on 25 years that they've been doing this. And this spawned more of these debate shows where people are prone to hyperbole. Like, he's the greatest we've ever seen. And even Paul Feinbaum, who should know better, and he's sitting across from Tim Tebow, is telling you that Arch Manning is the best college quarterback since Tim Tebow, who may be one of the best of all time, if not the best. He won 2 national championships and a Heisman Trophy. Not wasn't a great pro, but he was a great college quarterback. And what did we see in Arch's debut? Not too good. And even Feinbaum was willing to eat his words on that. So it's kind of, you reap what you sow, and Tony and Mike, for better or for worse, have created this environment where people, in order to make a name for themselves or make their position known, say ridiculous things like that. That's the best I've ever seen. There's a great comeback, too, by Mike. I would suggest you watch more college football if that's the best you've ever seen. All right, one more, and I said I was going to get to the North Carolina thing. We spent a lot of time on that yesterday. It's an amazing thing, at least to me, what has happened to Bill Belichick, who has gone from in like 5 years, because as I mentioned yesterday, in a 4-year period between 2017 and 2020, those 4 seasons, the New England Patriots won 2 Super Bowls with Bill Belichick, and Alabama won 2 national championships with Nick Saban. They are friends. And if you said in 2020, that seals it, Belichick is the greatest pro coach of all time, Nick Saban is the greatest college coach of all time, nobody would argue with you. Now we didn't really see the downfall of Saban. He got out. He got his team in the playoff, got to the semifinal, and said, that's it, I'm done. I don't want to deal with players just asking me how much money they're going to make. So he retired with the crown, 6 national titles, and one he won at LSU. I mean, come on. He did what he needed to do, and he got out on top. Bill Belichick went through the fade of New England, where he was essentially forced out the door, could not get a job in the NFL. It looked like he was even going to get the Atlanta job, didn't get it. And now he's gone to North Carolina. It's been off-season embarrassment with the girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, and now she's on the sidelines during the game talking to him. Do you think that would have happened when he was coaching in the NFL? I do not. And then to see his team just get, bulldozed in a game, a home game But TCU, with all these celebrities in the stands, and they did a lot of talking. They did a lot of strutting. Hey, here comes the greatest coach of all time. He's going to turn North Carolina into a football school. Watch 33rd team, the whole thing. Well, Luke DeCock has watched all of this. He's a reporter with the Raleigh News and Observer. He's been covering North Carolina football for 20 years. He was on with Dan Patrick yesterday with his assessment of what North Carolina did in what resulted in this awful embarrassment against TCU on Monday.
Carolina brought this on itself. Bill Belichick brought this on himself. Mike Lombardi brought this on himself. They talked that they had to untie the college football knot. They were going to come in. They were smarter than everybody else. They were better than everybody else. And it turned, like, I'm telling you right now, Dave Dorn over in Raleigh, the NC State coach last night, I guarantee you he had a cigar. He had a solo cup of whiskey. He's got his feet up. He's laughing his butt off. Like, these guys just came in. We are so much better than you. We have this figured out. We have Super Bowl rings. And they got they got embarrassed in their first college game. I think the fans saw that too. There was a very strong element of the Emperor's New Clothes last night. I joked in my column, like, forget the cutoff sleeves. Belichick got pantsed last night. Like, he got exposed. And that, I think, more than anything, really sort of put a pin in the idea that, the UNC is going to be in the CFP and they're going to revolutionize college football. And, they've got a new paradigm. I mean, it was to get beat like that, to be out-talented and out-coached and out-adjusted, and to see what we've known all along, right? TCU, they're out there tweeting an image of the Hulu series and saying, when's the first episode? Like, everybody is gunning for these guys, and they were totally unprepared for it. So, I mean, to me, the patience is already gone. People are just kind of wondering how bad it's going to be. And again, look, we talked about this a second ago. This is maybe not the way the whole season is going to go, right? Like, you can get better. And if Bill Belichick is the coach that he says he is and that UNC's boosters are paying for, they will get better and they will learn from this. And now they have film and they know who they can trust and who they can't. But, and if this was John Sumrall or Jeff Monken or any of the other coaches they could have hired, we'd all be saying, hey, what did you expect? They have 70 new players, right? This is turnover. There's going to be growing pains and this is going to take time. But that's not what Bill Belichick said. That's not what he promised. They were coming in to change college football to be the 33rd NFL team. And I'm going to make the same joke I made the last time I was with you. Like, yes, this was very Cleveland Browns-esque. It was very much the 33rd NFL team.
Just to confirm, North Carolina is still a basketball school.
I mean, the only Jordan that still matters is Michael.
Mm-hmm. Well, weren't they together with the dignitaries up there all in the same?
Yeah, and Lawrence Taylor and Roy. Yeah, but hey, it's to me... To me, this almost puts more pressure on Hubert Davis because basketball is going to have to make up for this.
Yeah, and Hubert Davis is feeling the heat, too, because they're not up to standards of North Carolina basketball either. But what Bill Belichick did, and this is the comp that I have, it's Johnny Unitas playing for the Chargers. It's the coaching version of Johnny Unitas in his last year in the NFL. Now, if you remember this, Unitas had a spectacular career with the Baltimore Colts. He won back-to-back championships in 1958, 1959. 1970, he was actually the quarterback the whole year, the starting quarterback, got hurt in the Super Bowl. Earl Morrall came off the bench, and they beat the Dallas Cowboys in that game. So he had 3 championships, but he was getting older. They didn't protect quarterbacks then like they do now. And he was old. He was 39, beat up. He lost his starting job to Marty Domrez in 1972 in Baltimore. And he wanted to prove that he could still play. And the San Diego Chargers called him. They wanted him. Maybe they needed him as a drawing card, or maybe they thought he had something left at 40. He did not. And Johnny Unitas' first game for the San Diego Chargers was at RFK Stadium to open up the 1973 season, September 16th of 1973. Unitas, in a 38-0 loss, was 6 for 17 for 55 yards with 3 interceptions and 5 sacks. He would go on to make only 4 more starts the entire season. His passing percentage, 44.7, even then was terrible. He threw 3 touchdown passes and 7 interceptions for the year. He was clearly done. I don't know if Bill Belichick is clearly done. It's a little different in coaching than in playing. But watching what Bill Belichick did on the sidelines as the head coach at North Carolina on Monday night was a lot like what I watched as a 15-year-old on television. And by the way, that was the first year of the blackout, so it's the first time I actually saw RFK Stadium in living color in a home game on my TV set. And we saw just Johnny Unitas tragically looking terrible. He was absolutely terrible. And at the end of the season, he did retire. One other quick note on college. There's a group of athletes led by Vanderbilt linebacker Langston Patterson. They filed a class action suit against the NCAA over their redshirt rules. And the goal of it, they say, is to change the eligibility for redshirted players. Right now, it's 5 for 5, which means college athletes have 5 years to play 4 seasons. What they want is 5 years of eligibility so that, a player in what would be a redshirt year would still be able to play. He says the NCAA has no basis to prohibit a player who is working just as hard as all of his teammates in practice, in the weight room, in the classroom, from stepping on the field or court to compete against another school in one of those seasons. And this goes back also to Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia, who pulled up the biggest upset last year when he beat Alabama, that he was looking for a 6-year of eligibility. A federal judge granted Pavia an injunction for the football season and ruled that his junior college seasons in 20 and 21 did not count against his NCAA eligibility. I think they ought to let these guys play. I think the whole way that college football works now with these guys making all this money, and we still have a few leftovers from the COVID season of 20 when they gave you an extra year. The Kentucky quarterback, as I understand it, is a 7th-year senior. The 2020 season didn't count. And he took 2 redshirt years. So I think he's close to 25. A 7th-year senior is the starting quarterback at Kentucky. So, yeah, why not? Make these rules as lax as they can because these are professional football players, professional basketball players. Let them ply their trade. Let the schools want them. They're willing to pay them. Why not? I mean, it just to me that the whole system just went kablooey once it went to the Supreme Court, and they said, "Oh yeah, you're basically committing slavery here by making sure the players aren't being paid." And then there were no rules. It just became the wild, wild west. So I'm fully behind this. And if you get to play 5 years of college football or college basketball, so be it. It's fine. And I'll tell you something else. When you watch a game now, you don't know any of these players. You don't know them from your team. The team changes every year. North Carolina had 70 new players on the roster this year. So, yeah, so what? All right, coming up, Orioles preview. We will look back and look ahead as on Saturday they celebrate the 30th anniversary of Cal Ripken Jr. breaking Lou Gehrig's record. We'll tell you about some of the extras that are thrown in for this Saturday night game, and we'll look back on Cal's speech 30 years ago after breaking the record. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.